this is a brief overview of our Cuba tour, which is at the end of November, early December of 2025. It runs from November 29th to December 3rd. Oh, that slide should not be there. My bad. Okay, so a little bit about the trip as an overview. So Cuba is a really, really incredible country and one that not that many Americans get to visit, but we are really excited to be taking a group there. This trip is going to combine Havana, which is obviously the cultural capital and also the political capital of Cuba, as well as a day trip to Viñales, which is a really beautiful valley kind of in central Cuba that is known for its very unique landscapes with these kind of hills, mountains type formations, as well as being the center of farming. And specifically, if you've ever wanted to have a Cuban cigar, we will be visiting a farm that actually grows the tobacco for these Cuban cigars. And that is something which you are allowed to purchase in Cuba and bring back to the US. You can't bring like thousands of them, but a pack or two is totally doable. So they make a good gift. The highlights, like I said, spending a lot of time in Old Havana, then going to Viñales. We will do a guided tour of Havana as well in a classic car. Because there are so many import restrictions from other countries on Cuba, it's one of the places that still has really well maintained classic convertibles and classic cars. So we'll have the chance to drive those around the city in a convertible. And we will also be taking a salsa dancing lesson and a cooking class. So it's a very active tour. And the reason it is because you can't be a normal tourist, at least as an American citizen in Cuba. You have to go do a trip that is in support of the local Cuban people, which means we're going to be spending our days with local guides, with entrepreneurs, with artists, and really local Cubans, getting to know their culture and country from their perspective, and benefiting our tourism, our dollars that we spend in Cuba will really benefit the local people. And that is how, as an American citizen, you can go. So you can't stay in a government-owned hotel or do just sitting by a beach relaxing. Instead, you need to have an active itinerary that is focused on learning about Cuban history, the people, the culture, and the entrepreneurial spirit of the country. I will do a little day by day. So the 29th, everybody will arrive to Havana Airport. And there is a direct flight from Miami, from Tampa, and from Houston, pretty much every day from those cities to Havana. So if you're coming from the US, we would recommend booking your flight connecting through one of those cities, or it could be simpler for some folks if you wanted to connect via Mexico. There are many flights where you can fly the US to Mexico City to Havana. But you'll book your flight. We will arrange your airport transfer, gather you from the Havana airport, and take you to our private villa. This private villa, in Spanish and Cuban, they are called a casa particular, which means that it's a guest house. So it's somewhere between a bed and breakfast and a true hotel. We are staying it's very boutique. There's only 10 rooms. And so it'll be really just our group staying at this residence. It's a beautifully converted townhome. Everyone will get their own private room and their own private bathroom. And this evening, we'll have a welcome dinner and get to taste Cuban food for the first time and really just get to know each other. And this will set the tone for the rest of the trip. The 30th is going to be our day focused on Havana and the history of the city. So we'll have first a guided walking tour of Old Havana with lots of stops at some of the iconic landmarks, as well as visits of local artisans and galleries. And then in the afternoon, we'll do the vintage convertible car ride where you'll get to see a little bit wider swath of Havana, not just the old part of the city that we will walk through. And then in the evening, we'll have a salsa dancing lesson followed by dinner and some free time. There are really great bars, restaurants, all within walking distance of our little B&B. And so if folks wanted to stay out and go get a drink or experience any of Havana's nightlife, this would be a good night to do it. The following day is our day trip to Viñales. We'll wake up pretty early in the morning, get on the road, drive out to Viñales. We will visit the tobacco farm, learn about how they roll cigars, and enjoy a lunch with a local family. They're the owners of the farm, and this is a chance to really learn about life in rural Cuba. So most Cubans don't live in Havana. And it is very different when you live in Havana versus the rest of the country. So this is a chance to learn a little bit more about how folks live in this more rural farming and agricultural area of Cuba, as well as learn a lot about the Cuban cigar industry. And then in the late afternoon, we will drive back as a group to Havana, have dinner at our hotel, and then get a good night's sleep. The second, which is our last full day in Cuba, is all about cuisine. So we will join a local chef at her sort of kitchen slash home. She's going to take us to shop for different ingredients at a market, teach us about how Cubans do their grocery shopping, which is not at big grocery stores typically. And then we will all cook lunch together and we will eat that lunch. And then in the afternoon, we'll have some time to go visit some local art studios and do any last minute handicraft or gift shopping you want to do. And then finally, of course, you can't leave Cuba without tasting Cuban rum. And so we will go visit a place that is a distillery that sells really fantastic rums and have a farewell dinner with live Cuban music. And if you want to practice your salsa skills that you learned the other night, you can do that. And then on the third, we will have a leisurely breakfast and then transfer folks back to the Havana airport for their flights home. Most flights, again, there's not that many of them every day, so people will probably be all on the same one or two flights, and those flights will be typically between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. And so we will take you about 3 hours before your departure flight back to the airport, and then you will depart on to the US. So that is the itinerary. This is an image of the sort of B&B that we'll be staying at. It's called Claxon, and it's a really beautifully renovated townhome that has just 10 rooms and 10 bathrooms. So it's very small and quaint and just for us. The trip pricing, the trip price right now is 4,995 USD. We actually have just one spot left on this trip. We have 8 ladies signed up, and we only have one room left in the villa. So that room is priced at 4,995, and that price includes your daily breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It includes obviously the private room and bathroom at our little hotel. It includes all of the guided activities mentioned, plus your airport transfers and other local transportation, all of the tips, taxes, fees, pretty much everything that you might need to spend money on in country is covered in that price. The only thing that is not covered is your international flights, your tourist visa, which I'll explain about in a minute, and as well any US dollars you want to bring into Cuba in order to do shopping for gifts or personal items. But overall, it's a very all-inclusive price. And then finally, we get lots of FAQs. So I wanted to just take a minute and explain a little bit about travel to Cuba as an American. So it is still allowed. And what the Trump administration has done recently is just really taken a closer eye at making sure that folks are not doing traditional tourism or spending money that then goes to benefit the Cuban government. And instead, we have to all very carefully plan our travel to be something that is in support of the Cuban people. That is one of the permitted categories of travel as an American citizen. And it's why we've crafted the itinerary as we have, where you're spending a lot of time with artisans, entrepreneurs, and learning a lot about the history and economy of Cuba. We have crafted one in complete compliance, and we have a local partner in Cuba as well who does this for their entire living, is taking Americans to Cuba in a compliant way. So we feel confident that we'll be able to take you all to Cuba. You'll have a spectacular time, learn a lot, hopefully fall in love with the island and the culture, and do so in a way that, you know, you won't have any issues returning to the US. I've personally traveled, and, you know, as much as they make it seem scary when you're coming back into the US, I know multiple people who have done it, and honestly, you get a stamp in Cuba, you come back in, and I didn't have really anybody ask me except what was I doing. And I said I was learning all about Cuban history and the economy, and they said, great, come back in. So it's meant to intimidate and I think encourage people not to abuse the system, but ultimately it's very unlikely that you'll have any issues or really any questions at all from the government as to what you did in Cuba. We'll provide you documentation of your itinerary, what you did, and how it's compliant, so that if you were to have questions from, say, someone as you come back into the US, you can provide them all of that as proof of how your travel was in support of the Cuban people. The other thing that you do need is a Cuban tourist visa. These are actually only issued by the airlines. And so this is why it's super important that when people book their travel, they book it directly through one of the airline operators. United, American, and Southwest are the three companies that have direct flights to Cuba from the US. And so you'll have to book your travel through one of those airlines, and then that airline will actually facilitate the tourist card for you. And it's something that they add into the price of your flight. So it's not something you have to pay extra for. When you look at the flight price, the airline has already taken that into account. And it's a card which you will get, and then you will show upon landing at the airport with some of your information. So there's not really anything extra you need to do. As long as you've booked your flight through a airline directly, they will take care of managing the tourist card for you. Like I said, Miami, Houston, and Tampa are the cities where you can fly to Havana. Weather at this time of year is really nice. It's dry season, so it'll be sunny, 60s to 80s, and just really lovely weather, much nicer than the US this time of year. The currency is US dollars, so there is a Cuban peso, but you can't bring it in and you can't bring it out, so we don't use it at all. In fact, pretty much everywhere we go, they will take US dollars, and they prefer US dollars. And so you cannot use banks as an American citizen in Cuba. So instead, what you will need to do is bring US dollars with you into Cuba, however much you think you're going to spend. If you book onto the trip, we're going to be providing a lot of information about how much to budget for different gifts and things like that. But we'll give you a guideline, and then you can decide how much cash you'd like to bring in. We would recommend bringing in small denominations, ones, fives, and tens, just because things are relatively cheap in Cuba. And then finally, a note on the internet. You won't be able to have any US phone service while you're in Cuba. The US phone carriers do not work there. And so you have two options. One is to buy a local SIM card, which you can do at the airport, or just use the Wi-Fi that we have at our accommodations, noting that it is probably slower than what you have and are used to at home. So it's a pretty short trip, right? It's only 5 days. And we really encourage folks who join this trip to be ready to sort of disconnect, immerse yourself in the local culture, and just alert your family and friends that, hey, I might not be very responsive for the next 5 days. That doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means that I am in Cuba. WhatsApp does work really well in Cuba. And so we put everybody who joins this trip will get to be part of our WhatsApp chat group. And as well, we would encourage you to have any of your family or friends that you might want to stay in touch with download WhatsApp so that you can message with them over the internet or over Wi-Fi, and keep them up to date about your travel, should you want to alert people or send photos as you're traveling. So that is a lot of information. I'm going to stop here and take any questions that folks have.
I do have a question. What about credit cards?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you can't use American credit cards in Cuba. So yeah, it's cash only. You'll want to take out the amount of cash you expect to need, and maybe a little extra, and bring it with you into Cuba.
And you said, I heard you say about the Cuban tourist visa. What about, is a US passport necessary at the same time?
Yes. So you'll need, if you're an American citizen, you'll need your American passport, both to board your flight to Cuba. You don't actually get a stamp these days. You get like a little, it's the Cuban tourist card. You'll slide that into your passport. You'll keep it the whole time you're in Cuba. You'll show it when you leave Cuba. And then you'll obviously show your passport when you land back in the US. They give you a card, not a stamp these days, just because there are certain countries that don't have Surprisingly, they have even worse relations with Cuba than the US does, which means that they don't want to, people don't want to cause issues for you to be able to travel other countries in the future. And so instead, they just give you a card. And then once you get back to the US, you can throw the card out or you can keep it as a souvenir. But that way, no one has to know that you went to Cuba if you don't want them to.
And I have one more question. On the 29th, 11/29, is there a certain time that we would shoot to arrive by?
Yeah. We are planning our first activity around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So as long as you arrive sometime midday to 4 p.m., that's totally fine. The Havana airport's quite small and it's not very far. It's about maybe 30 to 40 minutes, depending on traffic, to get you from the airport to where we're staying. So I'd say as long as your flight lands by 4 o'clock, you should be able to comfortably participate in that welcome dinner. But if you want to arrive earlier, that's totally fine. I think most of the flights in coming from the US land sometime between like 10 a.m. and 3 or 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
You talked about being able to bring back the cigars. Do
Yes.
they have restrictions on their rum?
I don't think so.
That's different from when we normally travel.
No,
It's usually two
no, just the
bottles, like,
size. Yeah.
yeah.
And like right, you're gonna need a checked luggage basically to be able to bring alcohol in because it's presumably it'll be larger than the ounce limit. But
Well, yeah,
um
okay.
no, you don't need to. You would need to declare those items at customs in the US and just have them, have your receipt basically to be able to show that you bought them and um you're not bringing them in to resell them or anything like that. But I think you are fine, and I'll confirm the exact number. But I know people who have brought at least 2 packs of like a dozen, so 24 Cuban cigars into the U.S. And not had any issues.
Yeah. Okay. You answered the question, and thanks, Donna, about the arrival on the
Oh,
29th. That was a question I had also.
yep. Yep.
The other one, okay, the currency, so you're recommending small bills, usually no greater denomination than a 10 is
20 would be fine. I think you'll find that they'll probably give you change in that case. So I would just be ready. If you have a couple 20s, that's fine. But if you bring some 20s, I'd also just bring some ones or fives as well.
okay.
Things in Cuba are cheaper than they're in the US. They're not super cheap because there's a lot of import restrictions. So imported items are very expensive, but local fruits, veggies, if you want a coffee, you can expect that like a coffee's like $1, right? So you're just going to want small bills to pay for those things.
Okay. Alrighty. And that was it. That was like alcohol and money. Okay.
Um,
What
Perfect.
what about the water? Is the
Yeah.
water okay for us to drink?
It is okay, although we're going to provide you bottled water.
Okay.
So the hotel will have bottled water in the vehicles. We'll also provide you bottled water. And if you want to bring a reusable water bottle, the hotel has like filtered water in the mornings that you can fill your reusable water bottle with. But you can absolutely shower, brush your teeth with the tap water. That's not an issue.
Okay.
I don't think that there are no cultural restrictions around dress, like we can
No.
sometimes have in, okay.
It's a,
Yeah, I mean, I've
think
seen
hot, wet,
pictures,
think
but
go to
we're not
Miami,
locals and I
yeah.
don't want to be insulting. Okay.
No, it's a pretty liberal country in terms of dress. Shorts, t-shirt, dresses, skirts, whatever you want. Um, we're not going to the beach, so there's not really a need for a bathing suit.
Oh, okay.
But obviously it will be hot. So light clothes, it can get a little chilly in the evenings when the sun sets. So I would bring, a scarf or a jean jacket or something that you can layer up with if we're outside after dark.
Okay. And our free time will be in the evening, and you said most there's great restaurants, but other than restaurants, or you said like there'll be like I don't know, for lack of a better word, lounges. You can listen to music or
Yep.
it'll be okay. And those are all walking distance or
Yeah,
okay.
they're all walking or taxi distance.
Oh, okay.
So taxis are very doable in Havana as well. And we'll have like a car and driver with us all day. But if you wanted to go out after dinner, say, or you know, we're at dinner and then you want to stick around and listen to some music and come back later, it is totally safe to get a taxi. Cuba is incredibly safe and incredibly excited to have tourists. That was my
Yeah.
experience, was like I've never met friendlier people. And as much as there are some stereotypes, I think in the US, or it gets a bad rap, like my experience there was incredibly positive.
Yeah.
And people are just grateful that you're spending your money because they need the money to be able to survive.
Yeah, yeah, because I know I was afraid they have a great Afro-Caribbean jazz festival in
Yes.
January, so I'm really looking forward to experiencing um their their style of jazz. We all know Tito and stuff, so
Um, Perfect. Any other questions from folks?
Do they primarily, well, I shouldn't say primarily, do I need to brush up on my college Spanish, or do the majority of them speak English?
Um, Spanish is very helpful. It
Mhm.
depends. Younger people in Cuba definitely speak pretty good English. I'd say like the older generations, um, still mostly speak Spanish. You'll realize that people really appreciate, like I took, I don't know, maybe 2 years of Spanish in high school. I took other languages instead. But being able to like ask how much, you know, cuánto cuesta, or like things like that, how much is this, etc., like little phrases, it goes a long way. People
Mhm.
appreciate that. But for anything where, you know, menus, etc., all of that is going to be in English, or we'll have our guide there to help translate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I will pause it here then. What I will do is send an email to folks, and that, not to Carla because she signed up, but to everybody else with a registration link. Like I said, there's only one spot left, so it's kind of first come, first serve. But the process for booking is fill out that registration form. That will generate an email back to you. The email will come from wtaadmin@womentravelabroad.com. And in that email, you'll have a link to your invoice as well as a link to pay the deposit. The deposit is $400. And then again, the trip is happening pretty soon. So you'd pay the deposit, and then the balance payment would be due at the end of August, early September, 90 days prior to the trip starting. I think it's due basically by the end of August. So you'd pay the balance at that point, and then be able to as well just book your flights. We just ask that if you know, are interested in the trip and you're serious about it, send me an email after this, or reply to the email saying, hey, you know, I'm really interested, because I want to make sure I give priority, and we don't have somebody lose out on it because they were thinking about it seriously or something like that, but aren't 100% ready to book. So, John, for you, if you're really interested, feel free to email me back, and then I can answer any other questions you have or help you look at flights. But otherwise, until the spot is filled, it will be available for the next sort of 45 days.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, great. Have a good rest of your night, and I will hope to see all of you soon. Carla and Shaiko, it was great to see
All
you.
right, bye,
Yeah, you
Shaiko.
too.
All
Bye.
righty.
See you
All right.
soon.
Okay, all
Bye.
righty.
Bye.
Bye-bye.